and thank you. For those that don't know me, my name is Michael O'Rourke, and I'm going to serve as your Master of Ceremony this evening. And I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, longtime radio personality here, well-known public political speaker. Warm welcome for Mr. Brian Hyde, please. You're not here.
All right. Let me try this again. Microphone's intimidating, so I think my batteries may have actually given up. Just give me just one moment here.
Is this a commercial break?
Yes.
I'd like to say a remark if I can here. These candidates aren't running for office for the money, and they're certainly not for the glory and the power. Each one in their own way is doing what they feel best to better the community for you and their own families. And if you disagree with what they're saying tonight, please be respectful, and you can speak your mind at the ballot box on November 3rd. And what we're going to do, the rules are very simple. We're going to have a 2-minute limit for each candidate, starting with Mr. Grimshaw on the far end, to make an introduction and an opening statement. And then we'll go to the questions from Mr. Hyde, and they will be 2-minute questions each. If you don't need the time, please allow it. We have a lot of questions we want to get through if we can, and keep the time limit to an 8:30 closing. Any questions, if you haven't already submitted them, the ladies at both tables will be glad to take them, write them down. You can address them to a specific candidate, to a mayoral or council candidate, or to all candidates. Just annotate your question, and the ladies will get them on there to Mr. Hyde. The selection is solely his, and if there's any follow-up, because these questions are anonymously written, will be up to him. If he feels he's not getting an answer, he can pursue it. Other than that, could we start with Mr. Grimshaw with his introduction and his 2 minutes?
My name is Worth Grimshaw. I'm running for the office of mayor. The reason I'm running is I care about my city. I want to do what I can to address the problems that the city has. There are some cool problems the city has, and there will always be problems the city has. But at the moment, two of the main problems that the city has are both having to do with water. One of them is we don't have enough water, and one of them is that on some occasions we have too much water. Now, the not enough water is a real problem in that the city owns lots of water rights, which says we have the right to pump out of the ground lots of water. The problem is, doesn't matter how many rights you have, if the water's not under the ground, you can't pump it. And the city's down to the point where we just are in the process of spending $1 million to put a well online. They've spent $800,000 on that so far, and the words I've heard so far are that well test pumped 900 gallons per minute, but it will obviously never pump that much when it goes online. And it's probably going to be more in the neighborhood of 500 gallons per minute. Now, that's a lot of water, but it doesn't water a lot of families when you get down to it. Water is expensive to get. On the other hand, sometimes we have too much water. We had some flooding this year, not badly. A couple of years ago, we had real flooding. Over 100 homes got flooded. Well, what do we do about that? The city spent over $1 million, got a government grant for $1 million, and matched it with about, I think, 300,000 to.
Good evening, my name is Jeffrey Chestnut, and I'm running also for mayor. I appreciate you guys coming out this evening. The reason I'm running is because I have a young family in Enoch, and the future that Enoch has is the future that my family has. I have small children, twins that are 8 months old, a 5-year-old about to jump next year, come here to Enoch Elementary School. And the issues that we do face, what is correct, that we do have these infrastructure issues. That there's growth that has occurred that we do need to address, and it doesn't cost nothing to address them. Those are things that we as a community do need to come together on and prioritize and find mechanisms that we can defray those costs from off of us if possible. But if not possible, that we take care of the things that we should take care of, the things that we as individuals can take care of, that we then can use collectively to take care of. That's what we should be approaching when we have this local government entity doing things for us. Those are issues that I think that I can lead on. I work in an industry where basically my main practice is to help struggling corporations find ways forward, whether it be with creative financing through other entities, or whether it be through restructuring their operations. But I find solutions, and that is what I do. I try and find those solutions that are going to best benefit those who need those solutions. I work diligently, I work hard, and then you ask anyone that knows, I'm loyal. And I will go to the mat for Enoch each and every time. And I appreciate those who have voted for me, and I would hope that you would be willing to get out again on November 3rd. Thanks very much.
My name is Brent Taylor. I'm running for city council because I've lived here a long time. I've watched Enoch grow. Enoch is still probably going to continue to grow. And if we want to control that growth, we need to have some plans and some ideas on how that's going to take place. I agree that we do have some infrastructure problems that we need to work on, and I think as a community we can get together and come up with some good ideas to solve a lot of these problems. And I love this community very much. I've raised my family here, and it's been good to me, it's been good to my family. And so that's why I want to serve you people. Thank you.
There it goes. I think, there we go. All right, my name is David Owens, and I apologize. I'm going to remain seated for the question and answer period. I've lived here in Enoch for the last 5 years, going on 6 years with my wonderful family, and I see a sense of community. The reason that we came up here was for this smaller town atmosphere. But with a smaller town atmosphere, what we have is we have growing pains, because like many of us, we enjoy being here, and when one person thinks that this area is beautiful, you know that several others are going to be following you. And so with that, growing pains, we have infrastructure issues. We have, within that infrastructure, we do have flooding issues. We do have road deteriorations. We have businesses that are wanting to come in but aren't quite sure where they can fit into this community. And I think community is the key word here. We have to work together as a community. We may not always think the same, but in our hearts we do know that we want a place for our children to grow up in, that we have a place that our children don't have to move away from if they don't want to. We have tax issues that we have to look at. I believe that there are solutions that we can look at through bringing in smaller businesses. I myself am a small business owner and have a company here in Enoch. And smaller businesses that move into this area creates a opportunity to bring in a tax revenue that decreases the burden on the residents. However, in order to facilitate that, we do have to invest in our community. Just at what point do we feel is the appropriate amount, and what are we willing to pay for to satisfy those needs?
I'm Deborah Lay. I've lived in Enoch for 13 years. And as we were traveling up 15, my husband looked out the window, and he said, I want to live there. So we got off the freeway, and we found to sell some property. So we've owned property in Enoch for over 23 years. I love Enoch because I came here as a small rural area with large backyards, and I could do anything I wanted to create my paradise. And it's interesting because I learned a lot of things since I professionally am a teacher at the high school level and also taught college and had experiences in administration. So this has been a whole new way of living for me here, and meeting all my wonderful friends and neighbors who have helped me learn about how to live in a rural area. Because of my background in California, where I came from, I had, professionally, I have been in situations where I've had to work and resolve conflicts. I've had to work with also in areas of building team spirit, which I think is a great way to do things in my life too. And I have also had to work with budgets, formulating them, and also staying within them. And I've had to develop programs and then work with those programs and the problems that came along with them. I think those assets are wonderful things for me to have and offer to my community. I want to serve. And I want to serve in a way that I can help my neighbor live as wonderfully as I feel I'm living here. I'm conservative.
I'm John Store. Me and my family have lived here now for almost 6 years. My background, I grew up on a ranch in Idaho, and I'm very proud of that heritage, mostly because I have good parents. They taught me how to work and how to do a job right. And the thing that I do now in my professional career is I'm in sales. I sell construction tools for Hilti, if you've ever heard of Hilti. But one of the reasons that I'm running is, or several, I feel like this is an opportunity for me to serve my community. I've never been in a position like this before. But some of the things that I'd like to see happen in Enoch is help to beautify our town maybe a little bit. And there's some things that are in the works now, I think that's going to lend itself to that. There's some engineering that's going on to help solve our drainage problems. And I know that doesn't affect all the citizens of our community. The way I feel about that is that it affects some of us. I feel responsible to help out in that effort. And if it's the big drainage ditch down Mid-Valley, I'd like to see that maybe go underground. And it's a hazard right now, as far as I can tell. It's a place for weeds to grow and that type of thing. So if we could do some of that, or just kind of put a fresh coat of paint on our town, that's one of the things I'd like to see happen. And as far as the tax issue is concerned, I know there's been some discussion about how we pay for some of these things. I'm very conservatively minded as well. I don't want to see us go into debt for things that we can't afford. I would do that in my own house. And if there's some things that I can do within my own house, for example, within my budget, that's what I try to do, to help beautify my place and make it a better place for our family to live. There's been some talk about different things in our community as far as businesses go. I think that would be an opportunity for us for the next question.
So you need to have half of my time because I'm not going to use it all. Other words, I was born here, so I've got 75 years, I worked for the federal government for 33 years, and I've learned a lot. I've gone in and gotten money for my projects, for my people. I've supervised up to 42 people. But what I basically learned is, when you want to do something, you've got to not only find out what the cost is right now, but you've got to project what is that cost going to be in the long term. What's it going to cost me next year? What's it going to cost me 10 years from now? Some things appear free now, and it turns out, they're $150,000 a year. And that's not free. And we need the ability to forecast that way, and everything needs to be done that way. Let me just say, whoever did it, that I was really impressed with the fact that we got to put a little blurb in the water bill. The only thing they did wrong was they didn't set any criteria, like 400 words or less or something like that, so that we'd all fit on one page. But I'd like to see more of that. I firmly believe that the people can make correct decisions only if they're well informed, and they need to be well informed. What brought me to this point was the meeting we had when they were proposing to raise taxes. And from the city, well, I had a neighbor. He lost his job and his wife was cut back to 27 hours a week. And then I went to the city meeting and they didn't, no.
Yeah, go ahead and hang on to it. I do want to read a statement here. Dave Harris was unable to join us for this Meet the Candidates event tonight. I was asked to convey that he is sorry he couldn't join us. He had a prior work commitment out of town. He would like to thank all of you for taking the time to be here. And he will be at the meeting next week. So if you have specific questions for him, that would be a good time to ask them. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about his positions, he invites you to look up Dave Harris for City Council on Facebook. We have a number of questions that are addressed to specific candidates. I'm going to save those questions for last. And I'm going to start with more of a general approach that questions that can be answered by both the mayoral and city council candidates. They'll each have 2 minutes to answer. And I think we're going to, just to keep things, to kind of mix things up, Jeffrey Chestnut, we're going to start with the first question with you, just work our way down the line, and we'll end with you, Worth. And then next time around, it'll be Brent will begin, and so on down the line. And if I get confused, I need you guys to police me and make sure that we're keeping everything in turn. The first question that we have is, in order of highest to lowest concern, name the 3 most pressing problems facing Enoch today, and maybe briefly suggest solutions.
The 3 highest, I would imagine Worth did touch on them, and I would not disagree. And I think that the reason why Worth knows them, we all know them because they are, in my opinion, some of the most pressing, which is water is a huge issue right now. Right now, my understanding is we are at 117% of our allowance, and if we have growth of any more than 17%, we will no longer have water. So we've got to have this new well put into place. Secondly, I think there's now proposals to trying to figure out a way, is it an economical feasibility to be able to do some sort of comprehensive master plan type of a drainage system. We're a little bit hodgepodge. We've got some areas with curb and gutter, some with barrow, some with not, we've got these different issues, but as water comes off the mountain, it all comes down the mountain and it does its individual things in those individual neighborhoods. And whether or not we've got some sort of cohesive plan to deal with that as future growth comes in. Enoch, as I've spoken with some individuals, has indicated as we try to anticipate growth, we haven't been very good at it. We usually anticipate it in the wrong direction. And that's okay, that's how capitalism works. If you always knew the way things were going to grow, everybody would always be rich. So we have to be able to be flexible and be organic in doing those things. So I think that with the water, then we've got the issues with the master plan, comprehensive drainage. And then the third, I think we need to be not necessarily pushing businesses. I'm not for bringing in big box stores and giving years and years of tax benefits. But I do know that we have plenty of people in our community that have stores.
Water is probably the #1 problem. We've got to have water and we can survive. And I think Enid's doing the right thing by putting it in a well. Drainage is another big problem. How we're going to solve that, I'm not really sure. I understand they're taking a survey right now to see what can be done, and probably need to take a look at that and see what's going to happen. The third thing is probably businesses. I think we need to bring a few businesses into town, like a grocery store, some things like that, so that we can have our own community here and not have to rely on Cedar City all the time. I know when you need a gallon of milk, it takes you a half hour to run into town and back, so it'd be nice to run down the store, down the street about 5 minutes and back, and it'd be a whole lot better, so thank you.
All right, well, I think this is going to be a kind of trend. We obviously have our well issue that is currently being looked at in different variations of how we're going to fund this. Number two, the drainage and the master plan. I live on Half Mile, and we have seen some expansion and some redevelopment as of recently. Whether that has been to completion or we need to address future problems with that, I think that will come into the master plan. We can't look at this microscopic level and just say, okay, let's just fix this street and this street and this street. We need to have a master plan put into place and then decide, okay, let's start from the beginning and work our way to completion. And we do have plans already in place. There are these giant thick binders that are in the city office right now, and they have some great ideas, but I do believe we need more comprehensive understanding of what our major issues are and to work those through. And the third problem is economic development, and I hold this dear to me because I believe in economic development. Now, I do not want these big box stores in here. However, through economics, you learn very quickly that when you have that grocery store or a gas station, this larger store that needs employees, that needs other businesses to help ensure its stability, that creates a better place and a expansive job opportunity, business opportunity. I don't see in any given future a Costco or a 7-story mall, because that's not what we want as a city. That's
three issues I think we need to address. One, that our citizens are heard. And that is in the sense of what we're doing at the city council level. What kinds of ordinances that need to be in our city. I feel that more than anything that we need to have ordinances that protect our citizens, but give us the freedom in our own properties to take care of the needs that we see that are there. And so I feel that government should not dictate those particular issues. And that's part of then talking to the citizens of the city and having them come back and talk to us. Number two, I'm also impressed with looking at our budget and looking at balancing that budget and recognizing that not only our property taxes come into our city, but all of the taxes, all of the sales taxes that are gathered in Utah go to Salt Lake and then are redistributed to our community. That means that we are getting a part of the sales taxes from all over the state for everything that people buy, just not ourselves here in our city. We have other taxes that come into us, so that we have monies that we just need to look at and how we're going to regulate it. We have road taxes that come into us. From our gasoline, we have electric, all of the amenities that we have in our homes are taxed, and any city gets a part of those taxes. So we need to see how we can definitely give that out to our citizens and look to make sure that we do not unnecessarily tax the individuals here in Enoch. We do need water, and we are also having water problems, ditto here. But we also have sinking lands here, and there is a way, perhaps, that we can recycle the water and bring it back into our lands so it doesn't sink anymore.
One of the main issues that has been talked about already is the drainage. I feel like that's probably somewhat of a crisis mode. It's being addressed, by the way. I think it's called the CID grant, if I'm not mistaken. And so that ball is currently rolling. And I want to thank our city council now for getting that going. And so what that basically does is there's a comprehensive engineering study on our town for the problems that we have now and in the future. And once we get that study back, we can make decisions on how we want to enact whatever the study reveals. If it's half-mile road, if it's future development, whatever it is. But I think the important thing is once we get that back, is to then take action on whatever the recommendation is. And then we can roll that forward as we need to, as we grow. So that's issue number one, and I think it's being addressed. Issue number two hasn't been talked about. I actually learned about this just in my communication with some of the citizens. We don't have a very good emergency response system here, whether it's EMT or fire. We rely on Cedar City for that. And, you know, we're 6,000 people here. And we had a fire recently, as most of the citizens know about. And I think there's some ways that we can do that through grants. I don't think it costs our city more money. Through grants and what we get in Cedar City now, we can pull back into here and offer those kind of services to our citizens. The third is possibly a nuisance ordinance. That goes in with my beautification efforts. I'd like to see us get rid of some weeds, to be honest with you. You know, if there's a way that we can do that, I know that's the thing about nuisance ordinances, they're very subjective. They're hard to police, they're hard to manage, and I understand that. But if there's things that we can do as citizens to come together and help control and beautify our town, I'm for that. Thank you.
You know, I have a college degree, which is neither here nor there, except you know that there are two kinds of learning. There's book learning, and there's everyday living learning. And I'm amazed that those people doing that engineering survey on our drainage have never asked people who live here where the water comes from and where it goes. I call it pistol whipping it. But anyway, before we spend any money, we need to look at it and solve the problem. Throwing money at things is a government way of doing stuff. That's not the way it gets everyday things done. Another thing I learned in the government, never confuse busyness with progress. If we're going to remain viable as a city, there are certain things that we have to have, and one of those is roads and water, et cetera, et cetera. And those things wear out, or they need to be replenished. We need to be stocking away some money right along to cover those problems when they show up. Okay, that's another thing we need to look at. Right now, I'm impressed with the city. They're doing a good job of the garbage and the water. But there's a problem with the water that nobody's even addressed, and I don't know if there's an answer. What happens if the power goes off for an extended period of time? What else are you going to do? I don't know if there's a solution, but we need to be thinking about it. Thank you.
Okay, as I said when I was speaking before, obtaining water is probably our greatest priority. We'll talk about that a little bit. Our second greatest priority at the moment, or a problem, is that we have a fishery in the north part of town, which just shut down in the last couple of years. A 500-plus lot subdivision that the city had vacated because the ground sunk, technically. And the reason it sunk is because all the water is being pumped out from under this valley, and it leaves a cavity down underneath. And at that point, the ground is caved in. Now, that particular fisher that shut down that subdivision is not the only place in this town where the ground is sinking. And I don't think anything's being done to address how to help solve that problem. We're not going to lift the ground back up. But the fact is, we're going to have to figure out some way to keep it from sinking more. That fissure doesn't stop where the end of it shows up now. There are places where it's showing up half a mile away from where it shut the subdivision down, or 3/4 of a mile. That needs to be addressed. The next thing we have is the flooding. Now, the city, as I said, just spent over $1 million to fix that problem on a half-mile road. Except that there are 4 main areas which drain in this particular part of town, and they all drain to half-mile road. And the one that the city put the piping in to bring through town is either number 3 or number 4 from the top on sides. It is not the big place where there are floods.
Okay, I'm going to ask another general question for each of the candidates, and Brent Taylor, we'll start with you. This is a 2-part question. First part is, can you name any services that were lost to Enoch citizens due to the failure to pass the tax increase? And the follow-up to that is, for what specific reasons would you support increasing Enoch city taxes?
Right offhand, I can't think of anything that the city's lost. I can see some things where we need some help. Like I say, maintenance.
Hold your hand up. On the bottom. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Maintenance is one thing. There's some trails and stuff that need to be fixed. Some items like that, maintenance items that need to be taken care of, new equipment, those kinds of things. As far as raising taxes, depends on what citizens of Enoch want. They want to keep growing, they want to keep investing in different programs, then we need to probably raise taxes.
All right, with the first part of the question, I'm not quite sure who brought up this idea that if we did not raise taxes, that the world was going to end. A city requires a tax increase for what they decide is based on what they need financially. If they don't receive that tax increase, the city wasn't going to just close its books and just walk away from it. They were going to move forward and say, okay, the money's not there, just like what we do in our homes. If one of us loses a job, or we decrease our income, or we buy something that was unexpected. And that's the great thing about our community is we can deal with less. With that being said, is that the most appropriate approach for our city? We're having growing pains, we're having people moving in, we're having services that are getting older and need to be brought up. We need more training through our local law enforcement and then our employees to make sure that we have the most proficient and trained individuals, so when there is a problem, we can cure that. Give me the second part of that question again, would you please?
We raised that.
I agree. I don't believe there was anything that was lost, except I don't think we have fireworks any longer. And you're gonna address that, good. Because that was yes, all right, we'll address that. And it was a wonderful sight, as I understand, this last 4th of July, because everyone got to enjoy all the neighborhood's fireworks. So it was a wonderful community type of thing that happened at that time. I am not for growing government. I'm still at the particular point, I am looking at communities, Enoch is growing, but it's only going to be able to grow with our water. So that's where we're going to have to put our efforts, is with our water, because we can't grow without that. It depends on what kinds of businesses that we bring into our area, because if we bring certain businesses in, it will require more police. It will require more infrastructure for us, and in the long run could put us in a position with Cedar City where they're having problems with keeping a balance in their city of businesses and being able to balance their own budget because of the things that they've given to those businesses, plus the more infrastructure, plus more police, plus more of those things depending on those particular businesses. And I'm still need to know that I love my city like it is. And I love the individuals who are from their own process. Like beautification, we have a lovely woman out in Garden Park who's gotten all of her neighbors together, and they're making the park beautiful together. So I see us working as a community and working and making a lovely city.
Okay. I'm not sure of any services that were necessarily lost either. I know the library was on the chopping block, and because of the way the taxes work with Cedar City, that didn't really happen, although I think the hours were cut, if I'm not mistaken. But like someone said, we need to put a little bit into savings, and as it is right now, our savings rate is just above where it's required by law. And I'd like to see us put a little bit more in our coffers in that regard. You know, some of the things that, and who's for taxes? I'm not for taxes. If I don't have to pay more taxes than I absolutely have to, I don't want to. I don't think anybody would disagree with that statement. That we came here tonight saying, sign me up for some more taxes. You know, nobody wants that. And I don't think as a community nobody wants that either. But what taxes are is a shared responsibility for what we as citizens want in our town. Bottom line. You know, so if we want some other services that's going to cause a little bit of a hike in taxes, and we want to shoulder that, let's do it. As it is right now, I think Paraguna is the only town in Utah that has a lower tax rate than we do. And so we're getting along pretty good as it is. And I'd be okay if we had to, maybe not 113% or whatever it was the last time we spoke about it, but let's take a look at it. And if there's some things that we want that's going to require a bit more money, and that's what we want to spend the money on, let's do it. But it's all of our input. It's not just us sitting up here. It comes from everybody that lives in the community. So that's how I feel about that.
We're going to talk about lost services first. Over behind the city dog pound is a great big building, and in that building they build circuit breaker switch boxes for substations, big ones. That guy donated every year $5,000 to the city for fireworks. The city would have you believe that because you didn't raise taxes, you lost your fireworks. Now, in all fairness, the city did put in about $2,500 along with that. But the bulk of it came from that guy, and that's the service that you lost. And that's part of my problem. I think the city should be more above board. You know, if something's one way, they should tell it that way. And don't feed us half-truths, and don't feed us innuendos. as people, you have the right to know. As far as raising taxes is concerned, Brent sort of did it and then he screwed it up. What he said was, they should raise taxes for things people want. Period. I heard the other day, one of the counselors was telling one of the other counselors, we have a AAA bond rating. We could borrow money and really make something out of the city. And the other one said, I like it the way it is. There's no reason to go into debt to become a huge metropolis like San Diego or even like Cedar City. We're just Enoch, a nice, quiet community, and that's the way I've always been, and that's the way I think we ought to really stay. So if you want to raise taxes, you're going to have to vote for it after you've been reformed. Thank you.
As far as I know, the city didn't really lose any services. They lost the fireworks with the failure to pass the tax increase. On the other hand, when they got through the budget year, my understanding is they were only a few $1,000s short of having enough to cover the budget. So there was actually never a reason to raise the taxes. At the moment, the city is not in the red. It has enough money, enough revenue to cover itself. And when we say the city hasn't raised taxes, which was said many times back then, that's not true. That's like saying, I've never had a raise. Now, we have in our nation, caused by the federal government, such a thing as called inflation. And what that is the cheapening of money. It used to be, back in 1944, and not many of you will remember that, you could buy a gallon of gas for 15 cents. How much does it cost today? $3.50, $3.60. Well, the gas hasn't changed that much. What changed is the cost of money. What used to be worth 15 cents, you got to have $3.60 to replace now. And it wasn't just gas, it was sugar, milk, everything else. Back when I bought my first home in Enoch City, I paid $100 a year for property tax. The property tax on that particular house now are over $1,000. Now, the house didn't change that much. The thing that happened is the city needed more money. They taxed it more, but not because they raised the taxes on it. It's because the house was worth more in dollars. It's not worth any more than it was then. As far as being a house, it's not any more livable. So the fact is,
I think we're very fortunate, and I think that we haven't seen an impact directly. I've made that statement before, and there's people here who have posted it online as validation of their position. But I think that is misdirection. We have lost good officers in our police department who've gone to other agencies. We have lost city employees who have gone to other cities because they're willing to pay them. We have lost a lot of things that are as far as quality. You might not have lost the service, but do you want professionalism? Efficiency? Where's the balance? If you want efficiency, you know what? We can gut it all down and you can bring your own trash right down here. And we can do those kind of things. But what we've chosen is we've got to find this balance, right? And so what we want is we want professionals. Do we want our law enforcement to be the D-League of the city 8 miles away that'll pay them to start $15,000 more and they don't even have to move? Do we want to invest in good officers that then move someplace? Do we want to have city employees constantly wondering whether or not they're going to be able to pay their mortgage while you make sure you get your trash picked up? It's not an issue of whether or not we've lost services. It's an issue as to whether or not, because we're unwilling to pay for the things we want done, that we're willing to exploit our neighbor to do it for less than they're worth. That becomes the question. Am I for raising taxes? No. Unless it's unnecessary. And as I've knocked doors, I've met plenty of people who voted against the referendum, and I've met people.
Thank you. This next question will be just for the city council candidates, and Dave, we'll begin with you. To the city council candidates, do you support the city requiring by ordinance businesses to have at least 20% of their property in landscaping? And please explain why, whether you answer yes or no.
Okay, I'm on the Economic Development Committee, and I was one of the co-sponsors and writers of this zoning plan. And zoning plans are typically created through a merger of engineers and architects and bankers and attorneys to figure out what should and should not be in those zoning ordinances. And unfortunately, the Economic Development Committee, we did not have the funds to hire on these such professionals to help. And so what we had to do is we had to go through dozens of other cities in the state of Utah and outside and talk with the city managers, the city engineers, structural engineers, and talk with attorneys to figure out where that balance was. And so we came up with 20% landscaping. Now, 20% landscaping for some individuals, you think that that's quite a lot. But you have to factor in business, the building itself, the parking lot structure, those are regulated by the state. We cannot change that. We can change it to 20%. And so what we did is we decided that we would go with the standard 20% and see where we're at. Now that 20%, that doesn't mean that we have to do grass and trees and shrubs and bushes and create such a high overhead that businesses can't move in and be able to afford. You can do zero landscaping. If you have your parking lot and then there's the road, you lay down gravel, or you do a type of waterless shrub or a drip system that does not create a high balance or high overhead. But if we need to go back in and change that and say, let's do 5%, let's do 10%, I have no problem with doing that. We have a problem right now with the girls' ranch.
At this particular point, I am against what has been done as a supposed, what has been introduced to the city council as an ordinance for businesses. I believe in the sense that we need to look at our community and what kinds of businesses that we have here, and again, talk to our business people and look at that, because we have a lot of people that have their own businesses here in our area. So does that mean I'm not sure about how this works, but if you have a home business, do you have to come up to that level also? So I don't know, and I'm not a council person. That's why I want you to vote for me, so I can look at these things, so I can better represent the citizens here in this area. So at this particular point, I'm not in favor of this particular ordinance.
I was at the city council meeting when the ordinance was talked about, and personally, I think it's a non-issue. First of all, I think businesses are going to do that themselves anyway. They're going to have trash and have trashing. And I also respect the work that the economic development did. They're appointed to be in that position, and they did their legwork, and I think it was a great proposal. And so I honor what they've done. And like I say, I think businesses by and large, anyway, are going to expect that and want to do it for themselves, regardless of whether it's an ordinance or not. What it does for us as a town, though, is it helps maybe give us a certain look that we'd like to have that goes along with the look of our town. So anyway, I don't think it's that big of a deal personally.
I'll tell you what, if I were a business and I were thinking of coming to Enoch and you told me I had to have 20% of my yard in the grass or whatever it was, I wouldn't come. That guy who owns that business, who's putting up the money to establish that business here, is not going to put up an ugly building. He's not gonna put up a landscaping. He is trying to entice customers to come to his store. And it should be his prerogative. I don't think the city has any right to tell somebody, hey, you've gotta have tables outside for your employees to sit at. You gotta have tables outside for the passersby to sit at. You gotta have 20% of your property and lawn, etc. The grill school, somebody brought up, the problem, I don't know if you realize that, the grill school sits on 20 acres. 20% of 20 acres is a lot of grass. That's the problem. Personally, fewer zoning ordinances we have to have, the better I like it.
I don't know whether we need to make businesses do that or not. I think if a business owner comes into town, he's gonna have a nice looking building, a nice looking yard, if you wanna call it that, parking lot, probably put rocks down, things like that, and make it look good for people to come to it. I don't wanna go to a business that doesn't look good. I don't know how many of you people would either. So if the business owner wants some support from me, he's gonna have a nice looking yard, a nice looking building. I don't know whether we need to make it 10% or 20%, but that's kind of where I feel.
Thank you. Our next question will be specifically to the mayoral candidates, and we'll begin with Mr. Grimshaw answering on the end here. Do you consider Enoch a bedroom community, or are you interested in competing with bigger cities?
I do consider Enoch a bedroom community. Our road layout is not laid out as a commercial center. We don't have a main street. The closest thing we have to Main Street is Minersville Highway, which is a restricted access state road. You can't just get on and off it anywhere you want. They allow us certain exits and entrances. We do not have another street in town where you would consider to be a city center. We're also extremely close to Cedar City. I wonder how many people who live over in the Ridge subdivision, for example, shop at the Family Dollar store on a regular basis and spend a big chunk of their grocery money there. I wonder how many people over in Spanish Trails or Cottonwood subdivision do. It is my belief that most people, if they're up in Spanish Trails and Cottonwood, find it's just about as close to Cedar City as it is to the dollar store. And are probably going to go there sometime today or tomorrow anyway. In my business, I have people who come from 150 miles away to see me, and they live in little towns, outlying towns, and the stores there barely make it. And the reason they barely make it is those people go to Richfield, or they go to St. George, or they go to Cedar City every month, and they do major shopping there. They go to see their lawyer, their accountant, their dentist, their doctor, and they go to Walmart, or Smith's, or Lynn's, and the stores that are there 100 miles away can't compete with that. I have people who come to me, and when they want to buy a car, they don't even go to the Cedar City stores. They go to St. George to buy a car. And I don't think Enoch is ever going to be a real commercial center.
I agree that Enoch is a bedroom community, but I think it's more than just, a bedroom community is more than just where you sleep. We can still do fun community engagement things. The 24th event, July 24th event was a perfect example of that. The fact that we were to do things for us rather than have to be, that's just where I go to bed at night and everything else fun I do is someplace else. And I'm not saying we need movies, I'm not saying, but community events, fun runs for children, any kind of different things that just bring solidarity is things that are things that I think we can be encouraging and leading the way as a city government for. The Iron Days are disappointing how little support the community gave it. And I think that may have been because of the lack of leadership by the current city council, which wanting volunteers is great, but volunteers volunteer because they want to follow some leader. And so not having somebody lead becomes a problem. Do I think that we need to be a booming metropolis? No. It's one of the reasons why my wife and I live here. My wife's from Manila, Utah. It's half of a subdivision in our community is where she's from. 300 permanent residents. We love the small town. I don't want my children to be raised in a place. I grew up in West Valley City. Okay? I've made a specific choice of where I want to live. If business grows organically, I think we should do that. I don't think that we should be stomping out the roses because we're afraid of some of the thorns. But that seems to be the attitude right now, is that there may be some thorns that come organically, and so we're going to kill everything.
Thank you. Our next question will be for individual candidates. And Deborah, we'll begin with you. The question is, I pay both state and federal taxes. Are you in favor of seeking grants and other state and federal funding to make our community better, thus bringing those taxes back to us?
Grants, is that what you're saying? I was on the tree committee, and some of the things that we were doing for the tree committee meant that we needed to have grants. You can hear me better now? I was a member of the tree committee. There are grants out there for beautifying your city, and I do not object to that particular type of looking at matching funds that are presented through the state. Federal grants I'm not too much aware of. There are some things that as I look at the economy and what we need to do for ourselves, I see more that we can as neighbors help one another, and that we can create areas and help one another so that we do not need to have specific grants, because that again is money out of our pockets going to the state for things that we can do in our own area.
Thank you. The next question is for Sean Storr. How will you clean up the city of Enoch to improve property values and encourage businesses to select our area to move to?
That is a good question. Next question, please. That's, like I said before, it's kind of a difficult thing if you're talking about weed control, in this case, because it's subjective. But we're all individuals too. We can take care of our property however we want to. As I mentioned before too, there's a CIP grant that's in work right now. And I think that can lend itself to some of what I'm kind of pushing for a little bit. The big ditch down Mid-Valley, I think that could potentially address that issue. Right now, I think it's unsightly. I think we can put that underground possibly. Just depends on how the engineers lay this out for us. If we could do that, though, I'd be in favor of going curb gutter sidewalk down Mid-Valley as an area. I mentioned in one of my other Meet the Candidate nights that my insurance company rewards me for not having claims. I don't know if we can weave this into a nuisance ordinance or cleaning up weeds, but I'd be more in favor of rewarding people for good behavior versus tying an ordinance to it and saying, okay, we're going to fine you now for not cutting the weeds down, for example. I think as a city, we can lead by example. Do the things that's within our power and in our control, and just move this along as we're able to. So that's how I feel about that. You can talk to me after if you have some other input on this.
Thank you. This question is for Wayne Grimshaw. How has the illegal alien problem affected Enoch?
Well, as someone who was born here, you all are illegal aliens. As far as I can tell, it hasn't affected us at all. Cedar City has some, I assume they're illegal. You see them in Walmart anyway. But as far as I know, it hasn't affected us. But I got a word to say about this nuisance ordinance. The biggest nuisance ordinance violator is the city of Enoch. If you live where I live, you know that that dog pound is awfully, awfully noisy. It needs to be moved. As far as that, illegal aliens don't bother me at all, as long as they're productive. But on the other hand, if you've got an illegal alien that breaks the law, you put him in jail just like you would anybody else. They don't ship him back to Mexico because he's going to be back next week. Put him in jail and he can do his time.
All right, next question is for Brent Taylor. This is like a pop quiz for you. How does the latest court ruling in Denver affect the private property owner?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
What ruling?
What ruling?
Would the person who posed the question like to clarify?
Very good.
Thank you.
How do I think it affects us? If they let us take care of them, I think that's great. If they don't, then we have a problem. I realize the dogs have probably been here as long as we have or longer, but the citizens of Enoch, we need our property. We need to do what we can with our property, and I think that from what I've heard so far, it should be a good thing if they'll let us remove them.
And I have to go to that. When I was a kid and worked as a kid, we had no prairie dogs. They brought those in here.
Did you have 22s? No, you don't have to answer that. Sorry, there's a kid and you can't resist. Next question for David Owens. Please detail your plan to ban yard animals in in Enoch city limits.
Detail how we're going to ban them?
Yard animals?
How I'm going to ban yard? Okay, well, my plan is that I'm not going to ban yard. In other news, if we have gophers and things coming down here, I will help eliminate them. Hopefully they stay in Denver, because if they come here, they're illegal anyways, we need to ship them.
All right.
If you've got rodents that are illegal and you want to have it done quietly, hire me, I'll come to my board arrow.
Okay, we have one final question for each of the mayoral candidates. And we'll begin with Jeff. Jeff, the question is, how much has crime gone up with the loss of those police officers?
I don't think we've actually lost police officers, if I'm mistaken. But as far as crime going up, I think that it's not necessarily the crime, and I apologize for understanding, that's other news. But I think the issue though is we have, when the crash happened and we had a lot of people lose their homes, those homes became investment properties, and we've got a lot of people that are renting. Now renting's not a bad thing. I grew up pretty poor. We rented until my mom and dad bought their first house when they were 16. When I was 16, but my mom and dad taught me, respect other people's property and be home when the lights come on and all that kind of stuff. And I think that what we've got is right now is we've got some neighborhoods where we have some potential problems, hot spots that could become greater because we have some issues with teens that need to have, they're not getting as good a supervision as we're probably all trying to give to our children. And what we need to be able to do, I think, is not necessarily deal with the fact that crime is increased, but there's the potential, I think, in the future, as these individuals become more emboldened and more brazen in their activities, where many more of us are going to start seeing property problems in our neighborhoods. I've had people communicate that to me as a significant problem, especially over here on Brent's area of town. That I have a friend that lives over there, and she and her father's house just caught on fire, and one of their biggest concerns was, because it wasn't a full-fledged burn to the ground fire, the remaining property inside, how's it going to be protected? And I think that those are things that we as a community need to be able to address. It's not something that's long-term, but it is acute in that instance, and it's also an issue that we need to just be mindful of as we move forward with law enforcement.
It's like you got another battery on the fritz. That's okay. Worth, if you can hear me okay, the question for you is, your motto is less government. Does less government mean less city employees such as police?
My motto of less government means less government than the government wants, and probably more than many of us private citizens want. I'm for the least amount of government that we can handle. And that means I don't have any designs on doing my neighbors in, and I don't believe most of my neighbors have any designs on doing me in. And so, I think we do need public safety. We've always had public safety here in town. Now, we went for many years without having a police department in town. I was just as safe then as I am now because the sheriff's department took care of it. Each for the city residents are residents of Iron County. The sheriff has the same responsibility to protect you or I that he does to protect the people out of Burrell or Newcastle. On the other hand, we have a city police force. I'm not opposed to that. I am opposed to the police having time to lie in wait for my neighbors or myself to make a problem, and then picking them up because they're doing 3 miles an hour over the speed limit, or because they have extra time, they want to go up on the freeway and chase cars so that they get a thrill from going from 0 to 120 to catch a guy doing 85, 90 miles an hour. But no, I'm not in favor of getting rid of the police department. What I want to do is check out the police department. Some of those rules may have changed. If we have less police officers now than we had a while back, maybe we don't do some of those things anymore. I'm not in favor of the police snooping into anybody's business, yours or mine. And so, I like Mr. Ames, our police chief. I think he's a great guy. I hope I'm considered to be a good friend of his, and I'm not interested in doing him in or any of his officers, but I do intend to look at our city and see where the budget is, and see what is spent, and see what is needed.
Thank you. We're going to give each of the candidates now 2 minutes for their final statements. And Sean Storer will begin with you. To move on down the line. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it only 1 minute? What's the statement?
Okay, probably take 30 seconds. Thanks everybody for coming out. I am heartened by the involvement of our community in this process, and for the opportunity to speak about some of the issues that are important to our city. I feel like if I have something to offer as a city councilman, if I get elected to do so, to some of the things that I feel passion for. As I've met some of you in the community, I realize it's not all about me. It's not all about my ideas. It's about us as a community. And if we can all come together and get some of the things that we'd like to have, or improve something, or not improve something, whatever it might be, to make our city a safe, desirable place to live, that's really my objective. I like living in a small community. I grew up in one. I grew up on a ranch, as I mentioned earlier. And I'm proud of where I live now. It's been a great move for our family, and our family's done well here. And so, really, I have no motive other than to be the best that I can be in helping our city.
I don't know what to say to wrap you up. I'm very conservative. If we need something, we need to go get it. If the majority decide we don't need it, we need to either work around it or just don't get it. I'm a firm believer that the people, you people, citizens of Enoch, should have a voice in their government. And to do that, I firmly believe in being informed. I think that's the key to everything. Enough said, I'm happy to see you all here tonight. It's too bad the city put the wrong date on there, we would have had more people. But I'm happy that you made it. Thank you.
I could say amen to what Wayne just said. It is important that the citizens of Enoch are informed and that they are the ones who make the final choice. Our community is a great place to live. Everyone says they love living in Enoch. I do too. I choose to make it my home after more than 70 years. I could have moved away a number of times, but I like it here. I can come back, and I intend to stay here. I'm interested in input. I've actually been the mayor of this town before. I know where most of the bodies are buried, if you will, of all kinds. And I think I have some experience that can be good for the town. Now, oftentimes I say new blood is the thing we need, and maybe it is. But old brains who have been around a while do have some experience with various things, and I know about the flooding areas of town.
Thank you for coming out tonight. I would love to have your vote in November. I believe that leadership can take Enoch and all of the wonderful things and all of the wonderful resources, which is ultimately all of us, and keep it the beautiful place that we all love. If I'm elected to be the mayor, there's no one who would be not welcome in a conversation with me. I know that there's been times I've been quoted as, if you're a jerk, I'll take a bat to you. The 2 times I've been in a fight in my life, I got sucker punched and went to the floor. But I am loyal to Enoch. And when I made that statement was that if someone were to try and harm Enoch and the beauty that it is and the joy that we all have in it, those are the people we need to be worried about.
As I've said before, I love Enoch. That's why I'm running. We need people to help us. We get the community behind us. We can solve any problem that faces Enoch. I'm convinced of that. And it's going to take input from every one of us to come up with good solutions to our problems. And so I appreciate your vote this November.
Thank you for coming out. This question and answer was the most productive of all the primaries that we've had, or the meet the candidates that we've had, and I really appreciate this forum. Just a quick note, I have business in New York that I have to fly to tonight, and I will not be here at the other meetings. It was pre-planned weeks ago, and I humbly apologize for not being able to be here for this next meeting. Communication is everything. This city is a great city, but more importantly, it's here, and it's going to stay here, and it's going to be here tomorrow. It's just what direction we want to bring this to life. I don't believe that anyone in here wants a metropolis. I don't think that's even on the table. We want a community with community values that bring us together, and how you bring that together is through diversity of different thoughts and different minds coming together, fresh, new blood coming in, and
It's a privilege to be with you and to have this opportunity to introduce myself and to have you know that I want to serve. I am a worker. I prepare. I investigate. And I listen to the different ideas that are presented to me. I sound soft sometimes, but once I've gone through and listened to all of the input, I make decisions and I carry them through. I want to be a part of the city and to be a member of the city council here in Enoch.
I want to say this is one of the most respectful and polite panels of candidates. And by that, I mean, when the dinger dings, you guys were very good about giving, I've moderated other debates where it was more of an encouragement to hurry up and finish what they were saying. Thank you all for participating. Could we please give a round of applause to all the people? It is safe to assume that those who have individual questions for each one of you could visit and mingle with you here afterwards? Okay. Thanks everybody for coming out. Have a safe and happy evening.